Hey guys, Editing Sean here. Weird for me to open a video like this, but I think that this needs to be addressed. So throughout the course of the current video that I'm responding to, the person that I'm responding to takes an unusual number of digs at my appearance. Now, this doesn't bother me, but I know for some of you out there, this provides an easy opportunity for you to strike back in a similar manner on my behalf, but I'm going to ask you to refrain from doing so because I'm of the belief that a lot of people like this talk crap about people's appearance because they feel insecure about something related to themselves. However, in certain cases, people actually love victimhood so much that they try to goad you into responding based on their appearance so that they can claim harassment and then target their political opponents for attacking them in a personal way. This guy has no counter-arguments to me. He has no valid points. Let's stick to the fact that I'm going to destroy all of his points played out in his video and not focus on anything having to do with his appearance. On top of that, there are a ton of veterans that watch my show, and a lot of veterans have wounds and different issues as a consequence of war. So if I want to be somebody who stands for the people in my audience that serve this country, I'm not going to go after somebody I barely know based on anything related to their appearance, when that thing could be similar to something that a veteran experienced or due to potentially some kind of war-related trauma. So be good people. Don't use my name in order to attack somebody. I know this will fall on deaf ears to a certain extent, but I'm putting this out there up front because I think the strategy in what he's doing is so obvious, I don't want you to fall into it. That being said, we got a video to go over and we're gonna do that, so let's roll into it. Response videos to me on this channel are actually quite rare. This is because, obviously, I'm always 100% right, and anybody stepping into the lion's den to respond to me knows, or at least should have the common sense to know, that they are going to be beat down because they don't have the correct information. However, and I do mean how and then ever, occasionally, somebody is so delusional, so wrong-headed, and has an audience that is so gullible that they attempt to make a response video to me, and this is one of the perfect examples of this because a clone of Vaush has responded to my video about prisons despite the fact that he doesn't contest any of the information that I put forward about prisons. And in fact, in some instances, he highlights data sets that go to my point instead of his point. But before we get into that, we have a wonderful sponsor today, a wonderful product for you guys out there in the audience. So we're going to throw it over to that ad read, and then we'll come back on the other side and talk about this clone of Vaush trying to respond to my prisons video. Look, our health is very important, and yes, I just stated one of the most obvious statements in the history of statements. It's one of those things. And I'm one of those people who are super skeptical of supplements and all kinds of different things because I'm like, yeah, sure, it's going to give me more energy, sure, I'm gonna sleep better, sure, whatever. So whenever I'm approached by any of these companies hawking any of these products, I always demand a trial period. I'm always like, let me actually see how this works before I sell it to the masses. And I have to say, this olive oil product from C60 Evo actually works for me. Now, I don't know if that's a placebo effect, but I don't think it is. But I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, whatever. So I've been taking this about a teaspoon in the morning every single morning, and it actually makes me feel refreshed. I've been able to skip cups of coffee, and if you don't know, I'm half Puerto Rican, so Cafe Bustelo, coffee, it's kind of already naturally in my blood. But on top of that, this doesn't give me those weird effects that coffee gives me, that jittering, that shaking, that inability to sleep. Everybody out there who's actually following me on Patreon and knows I'm up constantly super late because that's when I post the early access videos, but I've been getting better sleep lately and I've been more in control of the times and I felt more productive this month. And some of that is attributed to, I can't lie to you, C60 Evo, this olive oil supplement. So one of the great things about being able to try products and being able to tell you if they work is that I can also offer you promo codes. So if you want to try this over at my website, c60evo.com/AJW, use the promo code AJW. You can actually get about 10% off if you just want to order it once. But if you get the subscription service, you can get 20% off with the same promo code. That's c60evo.com. I like it. I'm going to endorse it. You should try it. Maybe you'll like it. Hopefully you will. Everything will be wonderful. c60evo.com/AJW. So one of the things I talk about a lot on this channel is how not difficult response videos actually are to make, because you're going up against not an actual person who can counter the points that you're making, but a video where you can watch it beginning, middle, and end and construct your argument, sometimes over the course of days or weeks or whatever. So you should always come out on top. You shouldn't be losing to a video. You shouldn't debate something that you know what it's gonna say. However, this guy loses every single point that he brings up and pretty much proves everything in my video just by the way that he attempts to counter my video. However, we need to talk about something else, because the way he sets it up is by trying to destroy my credibility, and he throws out petty insults. We're not going to address that. We all know that the lefties are able to get away with insults in a way that people on the right aren't, so that's not really what we're going to focus on. But he mentions that I got owned by Vaush, and he cites a TikTok video as his example, and then says something related to British common law.
If you're a Vaush video viewer, you may have remembered the last time that his name ever meant anything, which is when he talked to Vaush about like criminal justice and everything, and instead of like actually talking about real issues in criminal justice, he basically just said everything is the fault of like common law, like British common law. It's just really kind of dumb. Oh, and then we got like a great clip of him getting blown out, and which spurred a lot of people to look into racial disparities in criminal justice system, which is great.
So I'm going to go over these 2 points because people say these things to me, but they don't quite understand where they come from, and they don't quite understand what they're putting forward. So might as well shred that first and foremost. Now, the TikTok video that people use against me, they say, Vaush got you so good with this TikTok video, it's amazing. I'm gonna play it for you, and the reason I want to play it for you is because I want you to see me allegedly being destroyed by Vaush on the point of marijuana arrests against black people.
People get arrested like 4 times as much as it.
But why?
Because black neighborhoods are over-policed. Let's say you have 2 neighborhoods, white and black, and the black one's a little bit poor. With that being the case, poorer neighborhoods tend to commit more crime, so the police chief says, okay, we're going to direct more resources towards the poor, the black neighborhood. Then, another 5 years roll around, another crime study is done on both neighborhoods. It turns out that in spite of the fact that police are overrepresented in the black community is now committing more crimes, not less crimes than before. The reason for that is because now police are there to catch more crimes. But what that means is more of them are locked up, and it means the community continues its cycle of impoverishment. The over-policing of communities is what contributes to their disproportionate crime committing.
Now, long-term viewers of this channel already know that I am not somebody who loses on the point of disproportionate marijuana arrests of black people, so they know that this is ridiculous. However, what you might not know based on this video is that not only did they cut it off before I responded, which is what I assumed originally when this video came out, because I saw it weeks after the debate and I had already forgotten some of the things that went on, but they actually cut, and you can notice cuts, edits in the video, which is them cutting out all my responses to Vaush. So in that exchange, I debunk what Vaush is saying about marijuana arrests. However, they edit it out, and then they're like, listen, in this video where we edit out everything you said and Vaush said all the words, it looks like you got owned. So I'm going to play the actual exchange, and you can see how badly this is edited, and then we're going to talk about it.
And you know, black people are not being killed disproportionately to the level of crime that they commit by police officers.
Wait, well, you just said to the level of crime they commit, but what you actually mean is to the amount they're arrested. Considering the fact that black people are arrested far more disproportionately than white people for the same amount of crimes, these 2 stats might actually be related.
For the same amount of crimes, disproportionately how? Like,
no. Like for weed smoking, for example, black people and white people consume weed at about the same rate, but black people get arrested like 4 times as much as it.
But why?
Because black neighborhoods are over-policed. And
but
also
why?
police because of long-term racial bias? What do you mean?
They're not being over-policed because of racial bias. There's more violent crime in those areas.
Wait. You have a background in criminal justice and you don't understand the problem with over-policing black communities?
I have a background in criminal justice, and I understand that they target resources to areas with violent crime.
Yeah, okay. So let's go over this. Okay, because I also have a background in criminal justice. So here's a problem, all right? Let's say you have 2 neighborhoods, white and black, and the black one's a little bit poor because of long-term systemic slavery, Jim Crow, blah, blah. With that being the case, poorer neighborhoods tend to commit more crime, so the police chief says, okay, we're going to direct more resources towards the poor, the black neighborhood. Then another 5 years roll around, another crime study is done on both neighborhoods. It turns out that in spite of the fact that police are overrepresented in the black community is now committing more crimes, not less crimes than before. The reason for that is because now police are there to catch more crimes. But what that means is more of them are locked up, and it means the community continues its cycle of impoverishment. The over-policing of communities is what contributes to their disproportionate crime committing, not the other way around.
No. So like the NYPD, the way that they map crime, because a lot of people like to use the NYPD as an example of this, is they use a system called CompStat, where they just track reports of violent crimes, and then they target the officers to those areas. Now, they do catch some crimes like marijuana, which is like the one crime everybody goes to, just because they're more present in those areas. Because to catch somebody smoking marijuana, you have to see it and smell it. If you have more eyeballs and more nostrils there, then of course you're going to disproportionately get people for marijuana. But that's one crime as a consequence of a higher murder rate, of a higher assault rate.
So as you can see, my position, as expressed in the actual video, the unedited actual video, is that the reason black people get arrested despite similar rates of use, and similar is key, it's not the exact same, black people still use marijuana more is because of the fact that they live in areas with higher rates of violent crime, and we send the police to areas with higher rates of violent crime. And because the police are present in those areas, by circumstance, by a side effect of us addressing the serious violent crimes, they arrest people for smoking marijuana because there are more people, more eyeballs to see it, and more nostrils to smell it in those areas. This is backed by all of the research. In fact, there was a study in New York that actually went even further than this and said that the biggest predictor of whether or not you're going to have marijuana arrests in certain neighborhoods, because it's not all black neighborhoods that have marijuana arrests, is actually a combination of higher rates of crime, but more importantly, the most determinative variable in the city of New York is people calling the NYPD and complaining about other people smoking marijuana outside. Since black people typically smoke marijuana outside more than white people, it seems this explains the disproportionate arrests for marijuana possession. Again, more cops in the area means that they're going to notice crimes that they notice more when they're in the area. Basic logic, sensible, all that, but of course, they have to cut me out of context in order to debunk it. Also, there's this ridiculous point in there that I've also addressed multiple different times about arrests and how you see more arrests and that makes you believe there's more crime. And therefore, we're looking at arresting bias. We're not looking at actual rates of crime. That's ridiculous in every way. A crime is not recorded when there's arrest. Think about it logically. If somebody is murdered, they don't not call it a murder in terms of statistics until after they arrest the person. They call it a murder immediately. This is because crime is measured by reports, not arrests. And we distribute officers not based on arrests, but based on reports. This is not something that the left has figured out and they've broken the game in terms of criminal justice. This is something that we've known since the 70s, that we need to measure crime independent of officer actions. On top of that, a bunch of crimes don't get reported. That's why, again, since the 70s, we use the National Crime Victimization Survey, where we send out a survey to about 174,000 households and ask people if they've been victimized of crimes. So we don't measure crime in arrests. Anybody who asserts that we measure crime in arrests doesn't know the first thing about criminal justice. We use the Uniform Crime Reports, which measure reports, and we use national crime victimization surveys, and local departments have their own victimization surveys. This is how we measure crime. You didn't crack the code by saying, whoa, more officers means more arrests, and that's the illusion of more crime. We already know about that. That's why we don't use that as a metric. You're not fooling anybody, you doofuses.
Thing, which is when he talked to Vaush about like criminal justice and everything, and instead of like actually talking about real issues in criminal justice, he basically just said everything is the fault of like common law.
And then the next thing is this British common law thing. This supposedly is me getting owned for saying something dumb, which was American law is rooted in British common law. And of course, the context of which I said this is completely removed, and what actually ended up in result of the case that we were talking about also removed. What we were talking about is the Ahmaud Arbery case. There was a myth being put forward by the left wing, I think it was by Benjamin Crump originally, that the citizens arrest law in the state of Georgia did not apply to misdemeanors. And based on the reading, you could understand why somebody would come to that interpretation. Now, I stated in my video, my original video on Ahmaud Arbery, still up on my channel, that this law did in fact apply to misdemeanors. And before you say, well, haha, they got convicted, blah, 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 I also said they would get convicted in that original video, and I also said that it would be felony murder charges in that original video. But what we're disputing at this point is whether or not the citizens arrest law applied to misdemeanors and whether or not there was an extra protection for felonies. This is what I was telling to Vaush during the course of this conversation when I brought up precedent that dates all the way back to British common law.
They had no legal justification for committing their stop.
Oh, two things. One, that's not the case. That's the specific extra protection that's in Georgia law. There's common law around citizens arrest that dates all the way back to England. And number two, people did see him going into the construction site, which is not necessarily a felony, but it is an act of a crime. So
they didn't see them go into the construction site, and the existence of common law dating back to England has nothing to do with the law in Georgia.
Of course it does. Like, what do you think our legal system is based on? It's based on English common law.
Yeah, that doesn't... Wait, just because it's based on English common law doesn't mean that laws enforced by states don't take precedent over those.
No, but it's like the stand your ground thing with the Tamir Rice... not Tamir Rice, with Trayvon Martin, where the stand your ground law, which was not even applicable in that case, is just something that builds on a previously established precedent that is in Georgia.
Which has nothing to do with Georgia's specific legal provisions for the extent to which you're allowed to commit a citizen's arrest.
Of course it does, because the 2010 law that's under question is an extra protection on top of what citizens arrests were already allowed. Like, it's not something that is exclusionary.
It's not a protection, it's a limitation. It's saying that you don't have a legal right to commit
protection.
It says you don't have a legal right to commit a citizen's arrest. Okay, I can't argue. Do you have like a legal degree?
My background is in criminal justice.
Okay. I've reviewed this pretty thoroughly just to make sure there's no henpecking on it. Like, if you're just going to outright deny the existence of this law and the effect that it has on the case. I'm not denying the existence of the law. I'm telling you what the purpose of the law was. Like, to limit. I don't think it meets, like I said in my video, I think that this doesn't meet the definition of what would be considered a legal stop.
Now, these copycats, these clones of Vaush, like the person right here who just repeat things without thinking about it, without knowing the context, now just say British common law is what you said to Vaush in that moment. You got owned because you said British common law. But the thing is, we judge a tree by its fruits. So I was making the case that misdemeanors were covered under this law, and I also made the case that there would be felony murder convictions in that same video. Again, watch it. Vaush was saying that I was justifying the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, which is not the case. Again, watch the original video. So, when we actually went to court, when the judge was actually giving instructions to the jury about what this law meant, let's see what he said so we can determine who was right.
I don't read the statute the same way as the defense. There's I read into the statute. The first line addresses both felonies and misdemeanors. The second sentence narrows that then down to felonies. It doesn't discount misdemeanors. It just says in the case of felonies, if there's an escape going on, then the arrest can be effectuated. The way I read that is if it's a misdemeanor, the guy can be arrested, guy, gal, whoever it is, can be arrested by whoever is effectuating the citizen's arrest. But if they run, then you can't go chasing after misdemeanors. In the case of a felony, you can. And a person who is chasing somebody who's escaping on a felony that is justified upon reasonable and probable grounds for suspicion can effectuate the arrest.
I know this makes people on the left uncomfortable, but I'm actually good at what I do. I actually know what I'm talking about. And there's a lot of phonies and imposters on their side, including people like Vaush, who shoot from the hip and don't have what it takes to support their points. So yes, the law, of course, applies to misdemeanors. The reason I knew this is because there were decades, if not centuries, of precedent of citizens' arrest, specifically in the state of Georgia, and yes, precedent related to citizens' arrest that dates all the way back to Britain because American law is rooted in British common law. I said that this law specifically gave extra protections during felony situations. And the judge outlined it right there that felonies are distinguished in a different category than the misdemeanors. Now, we've done a video on the judge basically giving a directed guilty verdict, and based on the distinction between the judge and the defense's interpretation of that statute, you can have the legal scholars debate the merits of either side. That's actually above my pay grade because I don't know a lot about the specifics of Georgia law, and I'm not sure how something like this should go. I mean, I've heard that if it's vague, it's supposed to go to the defense because we favor the defense in this country, but overall, that's what went down. I was correct. These people were wrong. You can look at the footage for yourself, or you can be one of these dumb Vaush clones who just says British or English common law and thinks that's a counter. I realized during the course of editing this video that this is actually a good place for me to do what some of you out there have been suggesting that I do for a long time, and that is make longer videos like this one was going to be into two-parters. So I'm going to end it here, and in the next video, the part 2, I will go over him actually talking about the prisons. This feels like the natural conclusion. Plus, who doesn't love double monetizing a commie who thought that they could debunk a video that I put out there? So that's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Wait for part 2. If you like part 1, hit like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. Support me via the support links in the description box. This has been me talking about some doofus commie. Till next time.